It's showing you how you can use the random object in JavaScript. It's random in order to, it's a part of the math object, and it provides us a way to generate random numbers. So we're going to create a function that's going to generate a random number between a minimum and a maximum value. And then using those minimum and maximum values, we've got a starter function that's going to kick off the game output here that says guess a number between 5 and 9. And this is always going to change, all randomly generated. So the number and the span between the numbers is randomly generated. When the user enters in a number, it'll give us some feedback, so telling us to go higher. So guess again between 1 and 32. Let's go higher, so 22. And now it's telling us to go lower. So let's try 13. And I know within the console, I've got the correct number. So this is just for debugging. So typically when you do launch the game live, you're not going to have this within the console. So now we enter in the correct number, which was 13, and then it starts the game again and generates a new between 1 and 3. So let's try 1, and we got it correct on the first try. So we got correct, it was 1. Guess a number between 0 and 38. So the game will continuously repeat once we got the answer correct. Math object in JavaScript allows you to perform mathematical tasks on numbers. We've got the page elements selected in a new JS file. Whenever the button gets clicked, then we're going to run the code. So let's create a random value, and we're going to return that back into the output area when the button is clicked. So let's construct the temporary value, and we're using the Math.random method. Math.random itself will return a value from the 0 all the way up to just before 1. And that's going to be returning back a completely random value. Every time I enter it, it's going to be a different value. So they're always going to start with 0, decimal, and then the rest of the characters and the digits are going to be completely randomized. With math values, we can also round them up and round them down. So using math floor gives us a way to round down to the nearest integer. So we're going to update temp and use the math floor in order to set and round it down to the nearest value. And I'll just use whatever we have for the value of temp. And then for output, I'll update its text content to equal to what we've got within temp. So when we click it, we always end up with 0. And the reason why it's 0 is because we're rounding it down and we don't have actually a number that we can use. Within the console log, I'll output the value of temp so that when we click it, we do get this random value. So now if we take the random value and if we multiply it by the number that we want to get, we can get a random number. So if we want to do a random number to 10, we multiply it by 10, and that's going to result in a random number from 0 to 9 being output on the page. We can also set a minimum. So if we want to have a random value from 1 to 10, we could add 10 to that. So now when we click it, the resulting values are going to be from 1 to 10. And I'll just add this in with some spacing between them. And I'll just comma separate out the numbers as we add them to the content. I'm going to clear out the text content of output so that we won't have anything in there. So let's click the button, and these are the random numbers that are being generated. So every time you click it, it's going to be resulting in a random number from 0 or from 1 to 10 because we've added the 1 to it. We can also multiply that by getting a minimum and a maximum in order to return back the results. Can be used, and typically when I am using random, I like to create a function that will generate a random number for the function. So if we want to get a random number between two values, we can set up a function in order to do that, and I'll call it getRan, and we'll expect two arguments in here, so a minimum and a maximum value, and have those as arguments within the function. And for this function, we'll use Math.random and multiply that by the result of maximum minus minimum. So just as we did over here, so this is the total numbers that we're going to be looking at, randomizing, and then we're going to add minimum to create the starting number that we want to generate it by. And we need to wrap this with the math floor so that we return it back as a whole number. So the result here will be that we're generating a minimum and a maximum number. Generate using the function for temp. So temp will run the function to generate the random number and setting the minimum and then the maximum number. So let's set that to 5. So this is going to be resulting in returning back a value with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 4 because it's excluding the value of 5. So that would mean that the max that is going to be returned back is a value of 4. And notice that it's including 1, but it's not including 5 because the maximum value is exclusive and the minimum is inclusive. So if we want to make it inclusive, then we need to add 1 to this in order to include that number, that maximum number. So now we're going to be returning back a minimum value of 1, a maximum value of 5 within this result of the function. So once we run it a bunch of times, we can see that we get a nice sampling of the different numbers that are being returned back, and then this is all randomly done within JavaScript. And randomizing and creating random values is really essential in JavaScript if you want to make some unexpected results and values within your code. So let's create a quick mini application where we're going to update this and create a couple variables. And we'll set up a value for the minimum for low value. And this is whatever we want as the low value. We'll set up another one for high value. And then we're going to update the output text content to say, guess a number between the low value. So this will ask us to guess a number between the low value and the high value. Let's update the input. So right now it's a text. So setting the attribute of type, and I'll update this to be a number. So now we've got a type for the number. We can also set attributes for it of minimum and maximum. So minimum and max for the values. And this is where we can use these variables. So this can be fully dynamic. So that provides us a minimum and that provides us a maximum on the input. Let's update the button and text content. And this actually should say enter guess. And we want to have a check to see if we've got the correct random number. I'm going to wrap all of this within a function. I'm going to call it starter. That way we can run all of this block of code whenever we want to initiate and clear the values. And for the high value and the low value, I'm going to set these to be randomly generated. So they're actually going to change depending on what we want to set. So this can set a low value of a number between 0 and 5. And then for the high value, I want to set the minimum as the low value number plus 1. And then the high value number can be a random number all the way up to 50. So let's see what we got now. So we've got guess a number between 4 and 34. We'll create another blank, and this is going to be the hidden number. So we'll start it out at 0, and then we'll update this using the random, where we're going to generate the random number between the low value and the high value. So that's our hidden number that we're trying to guess. And that's a global value, so we can also check that on the checker. I can comment this one out. So when we click the button, we're going to run the check to see if the input value is going to match with what we've got for the hidden number. And if it is, then we're going to enter in correct. Otherwise, we're going to say that it's incorrect. I'm also going to update this. And as we click it, we'll clear out the text content, and then we'll add to the text content as we want to provide a message at the top of the text content if the user got it correct or not. So we'll have our condition that checks to see. So we can also set up a value of the input and get the my input value. And we'll check to see if the value of the input is equal to the hidden number. And if it is, then the user got it correct. And if not, then we're going to just say that it's incorrect. If they did get it correct, then we'll output into the console right now. Otherwise, we'll provide the user some information within the text content. So we'll assign a value for the text content, and depending on the condition, check to see if the value of the input is less than the hidden number, then the message value go higher. Otherwise, the message value will be go lower. And we can also condense this into a ternary operator where we've got the condition, first result on true. If it's true, if it's lower, then we go higher. Otherwise, and we'll output the message. We can also, into the console, show what the hidden number is. And this can be used for debugging so that we know what the hidden number is so that we can check to make sure our application is running properly. We'll clear out the input, and then we'll add to the text content to guess again. And actually, I'm going to add inner HTML, wrap the message in the div, and it'll say guess again. And we need to comment that out. So enter in a number, so go higher, enter in 9, now it tells us to go lower, guess again. When we guess 8, then we get the correct value being output there. And of course, once you get the real game, you don't want to have the hidden number. So we're going to be hiding the console. So this is only while we're developing the game. So once we see that the user got it correct, let's update the output, and we'll say correct it was. And then we'll output the hidden number for the user. We'll run the starter append to the inner HTML of the output, and I'll wrap this within a div, set the inner HTML of the element. So let's try the game out, and we get a guess a number between 3 and 37. Let's try 5. It says go higher. Let's try 34, go lower, and we see in the console that the real value is 32. So this is while we're just testing, make sure that we did guess it correct. So it says correct, it was 32. Now it says enter and guess a number between 0 and 41. Let's also clear out the input, and we'll set the input value to be just blank. And try to run through it one more time. So now it's telling us to guess higher. So once again, guess a number between 1 and 18. Go lower, guess again. And it actually should still output the low numbers and the high numbers. So where we're writing the guess again. So guess again between 2 and 6. Go higher. There we got the correct answer. So play through it a few times. Make sure that it's working. And you can create your own version of the game using the random object with JavaScript. Got a quick bonus for you with this exercise, and can you make this game in order to provide the proper feedback? So this time I did guess a value. I don't know what value I've guessed, so we need to have that. And ideally, it should change. If it goes higher, then we should have the value that we input there and change this range dynamically with the number that we've entered in, either it's lower or higher. So let's make an update and make an adjustment to the low and to the high. So when we select and we go lower, we want to have the range adjusting depending on what the guess is and the result from the guess is, and providing better feedback for the user as they continue to guess. It should narrow down the range that the user needs to guess the numbers between. Or we go higher, I want to make an update to the code. So setting up a condition, because we're going to have multiple lines, so we're not going to be able to do it in a ternary operator anymore. I'm going to just declare the variable, and then we'll populate the variable depending on the condition, add the condition into the conditional statement, and having the result for message, and output within the message the value of go higher. We'll also output this with whatever the value input was. So providing the user the feedback was wrong, go higher, and that's going to be the result for the message and the feedback to the user. And otherwise, it's going to say to go lower, so it'll still output the value and then say was wrong, go lower. So let's try the new version, and we see that 4 was wrong, go higher. So this value should also change where we're doing the guess again. So let's update the low value. When we set and we get the low value, because this time it's going to be higher, let's update the low value with the value input. And if we need to go lower, then we're going to update the high value with the value range from the value input. So we'll see how this works. So now we're guessing a number between 5 and 9. So no, we don't have a large span there. 6 was wrong, go higher. So now we're guessing a value between 6 and 9. Let's try 7, updating, guessing a value between 7 and 9. Setting and guess a number between 3 and 12. So now we're into the second game. Try that again, enter in a number between 3 and 7. So we know that that was wrong. The number that we're looking for is 6. So it's telling us to go lower. So this feedback is constantly adjusting depending on what our guess is. So it's telling us to go lower between 3 and 7. So now it's between 5 and 7. And as we narrow down to the correct number, this feedback is going to update for the user.